Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3o Art of Life show. The title of this show is In Our Own Images, Part 1. And I am very happy to greet my guests. I will start with the younger Kwame Steve Cobb, who is the founder of Cobbala Records, among other things. And in fact, I heard some words about properties when I called your phone number, so you'll have to explain that to me.
Oh, it's just a real estate venture, you know.
Okay, all right. But I know you as a musician, as a composer, as an arranger, as an organizer of cultural events and a lot of other things. But I want to greet you and welcome you to the H3o Show.
Thanks so much, Asante-san.
All right. And then, of course, Useni Eugene Perkins. I cannot say enough about Useni Eugene Perkins. He likes to wear his one title of being president and founder of the Association for the Positive Development of Black Children, which I think is commendable because he's been doing that work for how many years, Useni?
About 60, probably.
About 60 years. And I saw something in materials that you sent me that you're coming out again with the Black Child Development magazine.
Yes.
Which is excellent.
Yes.
And of course you have a new book. You make me feel so ashamed, Useni. You are so prolific, called Urban Quartet. And it's 4 plays that are used as a basis, as a launching pad to get young people to discuss issues affecting their lives.
Right.
And he's taking this into the schools, and he is about the positive development of black youth, really serious. I want to commend you for your book, your landmark book, which I consider my very favorite, which is Home is a Dirty Street, The Social Oppression of Black Children.
Thank you.
And, you know, of course, you've done books on street gangs and all kinds of other things, but we got to talk about In Our Own Images through you and through Kwame Steve Cobb. Now, this 7 Principles CD, this is the one that gives me my theme song, Umoja. When you took the 7 principles and you took Umoja, unity, and put that to music and gave it some lyrics and defined it and gave it some meaning that we could relate to, people of all ages that could relate to, you did us a tremendous service. And everybody that I have on this show always comments on the theme song. I will never change it unless, of course, you start to ask for royalties. So you did this in 1993?
93.
Okay, as a result of the whole Kwanzaa or part of the ongoing Black Arts movement. Was it was that and or that or?
I think and. It's always and. It's always a continuum. So we, Chavanduka and I, well, as a matter of fact, Chavanduka was asked to sing at Karamu Amani.
You have to define these terms.
Well, that's the last day of Kwanzaa. It's like a big feast, and
Right.
it's a day when we all in gather, and it's the culmination of the 7-day Kwanzaa celebration. And so we were asked, well, Chavanduka was asked by Dr. Conrad Worrell to come and sing for that event. And you know, there's a couple of things in her repertoire that she normally does, but we decided that we wanted to try to do something different this year. And so so we had a studio at home, so we began to play around with some of the motif that we had already started working on. And I found a piece that was the musical motif for this, and we wrote lyrics, and we had the kids sing along, and we recorded it, and we put them on cassette. You know, we duplicated a bunch of them on cassette and took them to the event, sang the song, and sold out. I think we maybe had a couple hundred of them, you know, 100 of them maybe. You know, we sold all of them for $5 a piece, and so we were like, wow, you know. And the comment about the music from Conrad was that it was real music. It wasn't a song for the sake of the principle so much as it was the principle for the song and the song for the principle. It was balanced in that regard, and I appreciate him saying that, because that gave us the motivation to just to continue to write and complete a complete collection, song for each one of the principles.
Well, I tell you, as I said, you have done a tremendous service for our community. Both of you, as artists, have contributed a great deal to our community, and we need to keep that going. So I wanted to begin.
I just wanted to add briefly to, I wrote a play that used the music Kamal and Malika and the Seven Principles. And we've done small productions of it. Okay. We're thinking about maybe sometime doing a larger production.
It's actually been done twice. We did it at the after-school program at New Concept. We had a cast of maybe about 13 children, and we did Kamal and Malika there. And then we also did it at Chicago State. Baba Ifetunji, who was the director of the theater department at the time, put it together and used the music and also Useni's play, and it was pretty good. Theirs was much different from ours, you know.
Okay.
But it was good. It was good, and we have talked about doing it again.
Well, you need to do more than talk about doing it again. I'm very I'm observing the continued onslaught of our image in the media. I mean, there is no media. It doesn't matter whether it's film, whether it's music, television, the newspapers, magazines. There's always some distorted image of us as a people and us as individuals that we see. You know, that is a constant barrage, usually of negative images. We are the poster girls and poster boys for crime, for everything that is socially unacceptable. You know, if they want to show people on welfare, they show the face of black women, and even though the majority of people on welfare are not black. But they still use us as the image so that when people think about the negative things in the society, they associate it with us. And so it is the obligation of all of us to do what we can to balance that picture, or to eradicate it, which is my preference, by doing the kind of work that you do, that I do, I hope, and that others do, so that our people will see our true face and see our best face. And so that's in part what the mission of this television show is, to bring us to us, so we can see us as real models, not role models, but real human flesh and blood people who are about the business of elevating the consciousness and awareness of our people by every means at our disposal. And when I told Useni that I wanted to do this, Useni sent me a lot of things to read. And one of the things that he sent me was a 1972 article from Black Books Bulletin. And Black Books Bulletin is published by I don't know if it still is, but it was at that time published by Third World Press, Hakeem Matabuti. This was, I have to read this quote because it just launches this exactly the way it should. And this is Useni Eugene Perkins' own essay in the Black Books Bulletin called Black Theater as Image Maker. And in it he says, one of the psychological manifestations in the black man's struggle for freedom in America has been his unrelenting search to find his identity. W.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, and Frantz Fanon have all pointed out to us how important it is for black people to unravel our diffused identities if we are ever to achieve a level of self-awareness which will enable us to rise above the aberrations imposed on blacks by the white society. Throughout the black man's incarceration in America, he has been stigmatized by an endless number of distortions which have revealed him as being something other than what he actually is. This blatant desecration of his character has been so pervasive that often he has identified with its negative features and begun to assume the characteristics associated with them. White America has used many methods to reinforce this negative identification, but it has been through the various media and literature that it has waged and sustained its greatest character assassination of black people. People, that is what we're talking about. Character assassination. How can you be known by the content of your character if your character is being assassinated on a daily, unrelenting, continuous basis? And we see this even in the most benevolent of non-blacks in the society. They will often offer us stories about ourselves that are allegedly to depict us in a positive light. And somehow in the course of telling those stories, there will be so many distortions and so many stereotypes that what we come out with at the end of the story is people with whom we would rather not be identified. So we get film after film, and when Useni is pointing out what I think is just a very good point, and the point is that we are often seen in these films as adapting to the abuse and the humiliation that is imposed on us by the society. So that's what makes us in some way like noble savages, which is what the so-called Native Americans were called. You know, we're the help, and we're badly treated, and we're treated like we're less than human, you know, even though we serve these people for years, for generations, but we still are mistreated and humiliated. But instead of fighting to correct the ills imposed upon us, we just adapt. Sometimes we adapt in depraved ways. You know, we do things that are just unladylike and unmanly in order to adapt to or to get back at, you know, the people who are mistreating us. Talk to me about that. This image of black people as being so resilient that no matter what kind of oppression they face, they are always able to find a way to live with the oppression and be happy slaves.
Well, there's many references to this, but a recent book by Tom Burrell,
Okay.
Brainwashed,
Okay.
Bamboozled. As a people, not all of us, but most of us, we've been brainwashed. And it began with the advent of the transatlantic slave trade, when they brought our brothers and sisters over here. The original treatment and how they had to be perceived to justify enslavement, they had to be perceived as savages, as pagans. And so these images were developed very early at the point that they were brought across the Atlantic Ocean and at the beginning of slavery. So been brainwashed, and the brainwash continues today in terms of the images. The unfortunate thing about being brainwashed, some people may call it a post-traumatic syndrome, slavery syndrome, is that many of us unknowingly or unconsciously have accepted it. without realizing that we are contributing to our own oppression.
Well, you know, I want to see some response that says that we knew that there was Nat Turner, that we knew there was a Denmark Vesey, that we knew about the Amistad, that we knew about the struggle here and abroad to free ourselves of the kind of injustices that we had to face on a daily basis. If we're not seeing that in what we produce, if we're not writing that, if we're not filming that, if we're not singing that, then all we have left is, again, some people, some brainwashed people who are so lacking in awareness, so out of touch with the reality that they live with on a daily basis, that all they can think of to do is talk, mumble under their breath, or talk behind the backs of the people who are abusing them. I want to feel something coming from us that says that is not us. The happy slave is not the black man in America. That is not his image. He is not happy, and he is not accommodated. He has not accepted. Are you saying we have accepted this, Useni?
Well, no, I'm saying Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner, they were demonized. What's his Styron wrote this book about Nat Turner, which was totally
it was William Styron's right.
Williams and Jerome Bennett did speak out against that. So we have the responsibility. But if we don't know our history, I'm talking about those of us that are artists and writers and griots and the messengers, the bearers of the culture, if we do not understand it, if we've been brainwashed, then the images that we're going to impose will reflect that. I don't expect white America to do this for us. It is our responsibility as artists.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't be better said. Couldn't be better said. And I think that the images that we get, I think the challenge for us is to look for information in other places besides mainstream media. And again, it's almost like the conversation. I was hearing a conversation Saturday about buying black, you know, and black people want to buy black, but the opportunity to do it is not accessible because they're not black businesses in the community, you know. So one of the things that we're working on now, we have a new production company that we're forming called Transition East Production Company. We call it TEPCO for short. One of the first projects that we'll be doing this year is to do a series of storytellers, because my vision of this particular project is to give young parents a body of work on DVD that they can use as an alternative to network television and cable television when it comes to entertainment or content for their children to watch. And there was a animated piece called Keriku. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but not as many as need to. And it's a powerful piece that gives African cultural content. It's a story of redemption of the highest level. Mm-hmm. It gives us a child hero. You know what I'm saying? Someone who does good who perseveres to do good, and he's misunderstood, but he manages to do good, and ultimately people understand. And even in the process of people challenging what he's doing, you can see the behaviors of our people and the way we behave when we're dealing with something we're not familiar with, or that we're not sure is correct or wrong. But the point is, it's a powerful piece, and we need more work like that. young parents are set upon economically right now where they have to work 2 jobs. Some, you know, you had single parent homes, and children sit in front of the television a lot, you know. And if you have, and sometimes you don't have much of an alternative, because the Sesame Street and all of those shows really are pushing European culture, a multiculturalism in a way that ultimately confuses our children or disarms us, so to speak. And I think that if we can generate these stories, because these are Aesop fables, these are African proverbial stories that, and we have so many fine storytellers here in the city of Chicago who are doing work.
Absolutely.
So we want to collaborate and bring this work forth so that it'll be available to our community.
Useni, you use your language is so perfect for this discussion because you use culture bearers. I love it. I love that. We cannot avoid being culture bearers. You know, you're a culture bearer whether you want to be or not.
Yes.
Because you are bearing the values of somebody's culture. Now the question is, whose culture are you bearing?
It reminds me of a quotation by Haki. So one way to fight an alien culture is to live your own. That's
Absolutely.
a profound statement.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know what your culture is, then you get all confused and be living the culture that is not reflected of your tradition, of your heritage, and who you are as a people. So those of us that are culture bearers, and all of us really are.
Culture bearers.
You're right, and I agree with that. How we talk, how we dress, our whole ethos as a people reflect that. But at the same time, if you don't know what your true culture is, if you have not, as Steve has indicated, done some research, then you are bamboozled, and as Tom Burrell has indicated, you've been brainwashed, and it begins at home, but we can't expect all of this to take place at home because unfortunately maybe some of the parents may not have the information that they should. The schools, you would expect, should be an important partner in this development, but it doesn't happen unless you go to a particular type of school with an Afrocentric paradigm, which Betty Shabazz and you've been involved in, and a few others. But most of these schools, I go to the schools quite a bit, and you look at what they are taught some of the same things. Most of the history books begin with slavery. It may have 2 pages of what took place before the transatlantic slave trade. They still using the word Egypt. They will not use the original name of the cradle of civilization. And so our kids begin as though our history began with slavery. And then they don't tell the true story about slavery.
Well, the thing is that we need to understand that as adults and as parents, that it is our responsibility to educate our children.
Right.
Now, whether or not we appoint somebody to assist us with that task is another matter. But to just assume that you should, send your children somewhere for someone to educate them, you have not examined what it is that they are being taught. You have not examined who it is who is teaching them. You have not understood the administration of the facility that your children are in. You know nothing except that you trust. You trust that if you send your children to X school, that they will be educated. But then, of course, if you are reading the newspaper or looking at the neighborhood, you see that that cannot be the case because there are far too many children who don't show any sign of benefiting from having gone to school, at least not on the side of character. They may show some sign of being able to read or to count to some level.
Yes.
But on the side of character, We don't see that our children are learning in school principles like these of the 7 principles. They're not learning to be self-determining. They're not learning to be cooperative. They're not being allowed, they're not given opportunities to be creative. In schools now, you don't have music and art programs as there were in the past, so that the children don't have the opportunity to be creative, to express their innate gifts, to develop them, to hone them. They don't have the opportunity to cooperate with each other, because every child is an individual and you can't share your knowledge with your neighbor because that's cheating or he's copying. So there's a value system in the institution that your children are learning either overtly or covertly, either consciously or subconsciously, but your children are learning behavior. They are learning how to behave. And some of the behavior we see is antisocial and very anti-black. So that we know that we have a responsibility to take the reins and to have a lot to say about what our children are learning. And if we can't say it in the school building, then the children are at home with us. And we have a responsibility. If you have a library card, you can go to the library and you can choose all kinds of things that will enable your children to understand something about their ancestry. You also, as you were pointing out, can get television and DVDs and other kinds of things that your children can watch that will build their character. Because we're not just trying to talk about developing robots who just go out and perform duties and get paid and go back out and perform duties and get paid, but we're talking about developing what Fanon called whole human beings.
You know, I often think about the overarching narrative. I think is somehow missing for us now. We don't seem to have an overarching narrative that tells us who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. I think that the choices, you know, we're in an environment initially where we were segregated and we had no choice about that. And so we did wonderful things in the context where we could see ourselves in total. We had reflection of ourselves. We had many things that made us appear to be whole. And then after the Civil Rights Movement gave us public access, you know, a battle for public access was something we could all embrace, because that was the obvious thing that we were being denied, and we believed that if we had access, then we could operate on par. Okay, so we got access, and what it did was it took the assets and resources we had concentrated in our community and spread it out. So people who wouldn't even take our money now benefit greatly from our purchasing power, and we don't, you know. So there needs to be, through our media efforts, you know, songs, TV,
plays,
movies, whatever it
books,
is, we need to develop
movies,
a new narrative for ourselves, because there, you know, you have all these different segments of people who struggle in our community, and all of them are necessary, no question. But and I mean, we haven't had a clear peace, because I think from the very beginning, at the point in which, you know, Africans were here, and some of us wanted to go back as soon as we had the opportunity. We wanted to leave. And there were those who felt like we spilt our blood here. We have as much right to be here as everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So we still don't really have that where we're going thing. You know what I'm saying? There is a direction that occurs to me as valid, and that is one that is about self-sufficiency. Because no matter what goes down, that is at the end of the day,
right,
you want to be able to manage your own affairs.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Self-determination. So anything that would empower us, you know, is where we should be going. You know, anything that would organize us and would cause us to coalesce together to amass our resources and to use them for our own benefit would be the direction to go in.
Right.
The conversation that art can generate that narrative. You know, it can generate that narrative for us.
That's self-determination. We have to define ourselves. Maulana Karenga was brilliant in terms of thinking about these values as they apply to us as a people in search of our identity and to overcome this racial oppression that we've been under.
Right. When you said you have 4 plays in this book that you use as a point of departure to start a dialogue, we need that same sort of thing, Kwame. We need some vignettes that will just give a mini narrative that people can use as a basis for exploring their points of view, so that the ultimate goal is to arrive at consensus. Not everybody is going to agree to every detail, but to arrive at consensus. But one of the things that in the narrative, you're saying we need a narrative, one of the things in your piece talks about nation building. That used to be part of the narrative in the 60s, because we understood that we were a nation within a nation, and that it was necessary for us to tend to nation building affairs, that you cannot express yourself as a nation. You have the numbers to be a nation. You have the interests to be a nation. You have the common destiny. You have the common denominator of oppression. You have all the ingredients that it takes for any people, that what you say, to coalesce, to come together, to cooperate. Now the narrative needs to include nation building of a nation that is sustainable, which is what you're saying, to be able to maintain ourselves, not just to survive, but to maintain, to sustain ourselves at a level from which we can develop, not just stay in the world, you know, just wake up every morning and you still here. But you are not only still here, but you're in a better position where you are than you were the day before. Sustainability, the ability to prevail and to continue.
Paul Robeson, who is my spiritual mentor, I think we can learn so much from studying Paul Robeson. I'm going to try and paraphrase what he said. He was speaking to during I think it was the Spanish-American War, Civil War, and he said the artists must take sides. You must fight for slavery or freedom. I had no choice. I had no other alternative. I've taken sides. So that's part of the art. Are we fighting for freedom or to maintain this state of whatever you want to call it, oppression or slavery that we're under? Paul was such a remarkable person. You're talking about the true man of all seasons. Mary McLeod Bethune said he was the tallest tree in the forest. He was an artist, but not only that, but he was an activist. He was a culture bearer. He spoke about, 26 different languages, African languages. And to me, he has always epitomized what black artists should try and manifest in their art. I've been very blessed, as you know, being an artist and a social worker. You know, basically, some people just see me as a social worker. But I grew up in a family, my father being an artist, and I was exposed to people like Charles White. If you want to see pictures of black people, the dignity of black people, look at some of his works. Charles White, And I was exposed to that. My father, all of his work was to celebrate the beauty of black people. And so coming in contact with these artists, it was just natural for me as I began to grow and mature to use that as an example in my art, which I've tried to do. And it seemed like that, again, you have a lot of talented young people today. They're probably, some of the writers, I think, are more talented than maybe we were when we were blossoming in the Black Arts Movement. We were just writing stuff because we was dealing with black consciousness. But you got some very creative, that know the craft, but it's the subject matter. What are they writing about? The talent is there. But the talent does not mean anything if you do not have the level of consciousness to put into that poem, to put into that play, to put into that image that is representative of who we are as a people. And I'm just amazed at all of the talented young people that I come in contact with, especially writers and poets, those that the spoken word, and even some of the hip hop artists.
But they are lacking forums.
That's exactly
right
what I
ahead.
was thinking.
Go
That's
ahead.
exactly what I was thinking. And so, the media landscape is a lot different now than it was even when I was younger. And I'm a gray beard now, and that kind of snuck up on me. But it's much different now. I mean, the record industry is different. Everything is different. It's a new, it's a completely new paradigm. How people get information now, where people look for art, and so content is really what we need. We just need to develop content. We need to develop content. Those people who are artists who perform on a regular basis need to have a ubiquitous tool by which they can spread themselves. They can be in many places at one time. And so recording their performances, documenting things is really important. Like I find so much information just looking at YouTube, you know what I'm saying? Just looking at YouTube, seeing people who are really, really talented, who are really bringing some truth through their music, So I'm not discouraged at all. I see so many people here in the city of Chicago, and I don't want to start naming people because somebody will be talking about, how come you didn't say something about me, Kwame, but there are so many, and there are sets, places where people gather to hear them do their art, and so we'll be reaching out to them to try to create some fixed mediums where their art can be exposed to a broader market. I mean, there's internet television. There's a lot of different mediums that are opening up that are available that we can use. And I mean, I'm really not tech savvy. There are a few other people that I rely on for those things, but I mean, you not only have this. When you are in the ether, so to speak, when you operate within the internet, you have a global market. Chavanduka and I had the blessing to interface with Charlotte O'Neill, and she came here from Arusha, Tanzania, and she aired the movie, the documentary called Panther in Africa, right? And they were from her and Pete, her husband, from Kansas City. So we did a fundraiser here to get them a water pump, a water system, because they're in a central location where they provide water for the surrounding villages where they are. But anyway, Charlotte, when we went there, they had a studio in their compound. They had a whole cadre of young artists who are doing hip hop music. You know what I'm saying? And she's a prolific poet herself, and singer. So, you're talking about when you're on the internet, you're talking about having global reach. You know what I'm saying? So the more content that we put up, the more influence we're going to have with our young people, because that's how they're accessing information. And I would like to be in a position to facilitate them being able to put content together in such a way that they can get it into these avenues, so that they can have the opportunity. It's a young brother that we met that's from Tanzania. He's here now. His name is Gwai, and he's about to embark upon a multi-state tour in Africa. He's leaving in May, and he's going there to do this tour to fight malaria. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, there's a consciousness among our young people that is commendable at the very least. So we should not be in despair necessarily.
Oh, I'm not in despair. I just want to see it be more prolific. I want to see more of it, and I want to understand that, you know, I too am an admirer of Paul Robeson, but we have numerous, maybe not of the same stature as Paul Robeson, but we have numerous people who have given us all of the information that we need to be moving in the direction that we need to move in. One of the problems that we have is that we don't study. You know, you must study. You must, first of all, find out, if you don't know yourself, who the credible people are among us who have put their wisdom in some sort of receptacle that we can access, whether it's in a book, in a poem, in a play, in a film, in a DVD, in a CD. We first of all need to have some knowledge of who can be trusted to tell us who we are. Amos and Wilson is one of those people. He wrote a blueprint.
Right.
You know, we don't have to be floundering. We don't have to be groping and in the dark to find out
and
what
the genius of black children, which he wrote.
You know, the thing is that many of our people, I always talk about Kiara Cheatwood. Every time I talk about Kiara Cheatwood, usually I get some blank stares because people are not reading Cheatwood. It's like you said about Neely Fuller, saying if you don't understand white supremacy, whatever else you understand, it won't matter. If you have not read Cheatwood, if you have not read something by Cheatwood, I would recommend, you know, first of all, The Race, which is a compilation of essays by himself and a number of other people. If you have not read, if you're not understanding the milieu, the social and political milieu in which you are trying to be whoever it is you think you are, then you are just, you know, you're playing because you're not connected to the real world. You connected to some caricature of a world that does not even exist. So the first thing is to get your feet on the ground and get your nose in something, and a library card goes a long way. It's free.
Indeed.
You know, I have 13 library books and a Kindle. You know, and I don't read some books. I'm rereading because I want to see how accurate they are now, because they were very accurate back then. So I'm rereading some stuff, and then some other stuff is coming out. You need to be informed. You need to study. You need to know some stuff. You need to see Chancellor Williams every once in a while. You need to see W.B. Du Bois. You need to see Frantz Fanon. You need to go to Ayikwe Arma. Maybe you should have a book club. I know that Cam Howard started an Amos N. Wilson book club, and they study Amos N. Wilson. But you need to have something when you gather to socialize, other than talking about who won the game, what new fashion is out, what other way you can finance your own oppression. You know, we need to start conversations among ourselves about ourselves and what we need to do about ourselves.
Speaking to Steve before we got on the program about the focus on black males, I go to at least 2 meetings a week talking about the black male, the despair. And I said, we went to those meetings 40 years ago and talking about the same issue, and the resources that we developed then did not get on the continuum until now. All male schools, the whole rites of passage movement. It's like Barbara Sizemore, her book, Walking in Circles. We've been walking in circles.
Right.
And the information has been out there, you're right. Information is there. We don't have to reinvent that wheel, but you do have to do some research, some investigation, and do some reading, because our ancestors have left us a wealth of information. We just have to go and...
There's more information than you can handle.
Right.
As you say, not only do you have libraries, but you have now the internet, which, as you point out, you know, I get tons of emails. I have over 500 unread email, because I cannot keep up. Everybody wants me to know everything, and I want to know everything, so I try to know everything. So sometimes I fall behind because there's just so much time you can spend sitting at a computer. But there's a wealth of information, but we're not sharing it with each other. When we come together, and again, Neely Fuller said, you know, we do too much socializing. We do too much partying, and we do too much of everything, but talking about the issues that affect our lives. And we sometimes, when we try to talk about the issues that affect our lives, we get into heated disagreements, and we have to stop talking, because otherwise we're going to fall out. So that too is a problem, because we are developing, because we are not operating from a family unit. You know, and I when Frances Cress Welsing said this, I was mad at her. She said, we don't have families, we have survival units. And I was gunning for Frances to try to make her understand that she couldn't put out that kind of talk about us. But she was in part right, because we were drifting in that direction. We weren't there when Frances said it, but we were on our way there to being just a place where people, you know, they come home not to be together, not to share, not to help each other, not to work together, but they come home to have shelter. They come home to have food. They come home to get rest. They don't come home to be together, to talk together, to solve problems together, you know, to work together. So we're not operating from a familial base, which is a bad thing, because when the S hits the fan, if you're not operating from a unit, then who is in charge? Who are the leaders? Who says go down 47th Street or go down 43rd Street? Who says go north or go south? Who says don't move? Who says what to do? And we are almost headless in that sense, that we don't have the authority figure within the unit that calls the shots and says, this family will do this, and not that, but this. And we will do this way, and we'll do this at this time. So we're not operating from the point that we need to be operating. We're not operating out of units, out of familial units. And that's a dangerous thing in a system of oppression, that you don't have if you don't have the ties of blood, what other kinship bonds will hold you together?
Sometimes, you know, community has been totally redefined. You know, it used to be your neighborhood, you know, your neighbors. Most of us don't know the neighbors, the people who live next door to us. So community is now defined by people who have like interests. And sometimes you end up being closer to people who have who you associate with around things that you have in common, closer to them than you are to people that are your blood relatives. You know, there's a responsibility that we have to our blood relatives, but if we talk about getting work done, you generally have to associate and relate to people who have your common interests with you. So again, I keep going back to this common narrative. I think that the trust factor is a major thing that keeps us from doing a lot of the things that we could do, that we could possibly do. And I believe strongly that there's evidence of us managing our affairs. I mean, there's evidence of us managing our affairs. However, it doesn't get a forum. You know what I'm saying? It's like the people who would, I guess the value of us being integrated into mass media, corporations and places like that, if people are conscious and have some familiarity with the history and what their interests are, what our interests are opposed to the interests of others, they could then be valuable in terms of determining, say, for instance, what story is picked on a news broadcast as opposed to one that is not, or one that might be negative for us, one that would be positive. I'm clear that we're in a hostile environment, and I always have been, you know. And I think that for the most part, people assume that that's not true anymore, you know, but there's no evidence that would prove that that's not the case, none whatsoever. And we talk about how subtle media is. I was watching Henry Louis Gates last night, and he was doing a piece on Afro-Caribbeans, basically Afro-Mexicans, you know. You just see it?
Yeah, before, yes.
I think it was the segment where he was in Peru, and he was in and he was talking about this sister, I can't remember her name, who had married one of the most prominent men on the island, and in this particular area. And she became one of the wealthiest women, and she actually convinced him to give, because she was his slave. But in the interim, while they were talking about her, they cut away to a dog standing on a cliff, and then, you know, you had a long shot. And I kept asking myself, what is that, you know? And then they cut away back, and they talked about her some more, and then they came back and showed the dog again. And I pointed out, I said, child, look, what is that about, you know? And I said, now, that's how subtle the subliminal messaging can be.
Right.
And one of the things that we do, part of some of the work that we do with young people, is to try to work with them to help them to become media savvy, to be able to decode media in that kind of way, you know, so that when they see something, they can see what's really being said, you know. And so this is, I'm just saying that the only, to put correction into this type of barrage that you mentioned earlier, that's not going to change. That's something that I'm accepting as being a reality. That is not going to change.
You said it, decoding.
Yeah.
How do you decode these images subliminally that we consciously or unconsciously? How do you decode that? I think
by
that's
becoming
excellent.
Conscious. You can't be in a state of non-consciousness and do anything, decode anything, because your awareness is non-existent or at such a low level that any message can be sent to you. And you know, there's The Unreality Industry is one of the books that's out there. Before that, it was Subliminal Seduction.
Yeah.
All kinds of messages are coming in subliminally all the time. And if you have no level of consciousness from which to view things, then whatever you're viewing is whatever you're viewing. It doesn't. You don't make anything more or less of it. And you know, with only a few minutes to go, Useni, I agree with you that the artists bear a special responsibility, mainly not because we can impose it on them, but because they assumed it. When they decided that they were going to tell us our story, then we can hold them accountable. So you said you were going to tell us about us. If a griot if we understood the African griot, he was supported by the village. The village took care of him. He didn't have to worry about anything but maintaining the records and reciting the records to the people on command. If he got a fact wrong, he was subject to be excommunicated, which means to be put out of the community, not be ever supported again, and not allowed to live among the people. So that you understand that when you decide that you're going to be a griot, then you got a heavy responsibility. You better know what you're talking about, because those of us who are conscious are going to put your feet to the fire, and those of us who are conscious are going to also challenge those people who are not griots but who have appointed themselves as griots to come into the community and tell our story.
And this griot was trained.
Right.
He had to go through a training period.
Right, because there were other griots who trained
and
him.
He learned 10 years or 20 years and passed it on.
Right.
This is what needs to be done when you talk about the talent is here.
Right.
But how do we raise the consciousness? They have more outlets today to disseminate this information than ever before. In the 60s, we were out there just selling poetry books for $1, out there begging, just going. Now you could do this on the internet, online. Everything is online.
So the question is not how. You just answered your question. The question is when. Because you just said how it can be done.
Yes, it can be done.
It can be done. So we agree that it can be, and in fact, we agree that it is being done.
Yes.
The example that you just gave, Kwame, it is being done. It needs to be done on a wider scale. Yes. It needs to be done with greater frequency. It can be done, it is being done, and more of it needs to be done.
Yeah, these kids are picking up the iPod, they're picking up this information just like that. Something that we did not have when I was a teenager. The information age, the information highway goes everywhere.
So we can be optimistic then?
Well, I still think we need to do, maybe we need to put a challenge to our young people to design this story about us, this narrative about us,
right?
This mythology about us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This thing that will, these words, this image, this ideal,
this narrative
that will influence individuals' behavior and thus a community's behavior.
Right.
And that's kind of, I think that's the challenge that is before us as artists, to make struggle popular, to give our people the tools that they need to manage this thing and to correct it, to make it what it needs to be.
That's a wonderful note.
Yeah, I like that.
Wonderful note to complete. See, and the hour goes by really fast.
No? Really?